Technologies. Welcome to HP ALM Quality Center 11 webinar, What's New Plus Tips and Tricks. So you're joined today by David Browerman and myself. We're going to start things off with an introduction and overview. Then we're going to slide right on to the discussion of new features in ALM and Quality Center 11. David will also discuss the differences between ALM and Quality Center 11, and he's going to share some upgrade tips and tricks. We know a lot of organizations are going through the upgrades, so this will definitely be a chance for you to learn about perhaps some of the challenges and a few tips so that you can avoid those challenges. Again, my name is Bob Cruz, President of Checkpoint Technologies. I'm an HP certified instructor, have been actually since 1998, back in the legacy Mercury days, for those of you that can remember that. I know we have a few folks joining us on the webinar that do. And then we've also got with us David Browerman.
Hello everybody, so I'll be presenting some of the tips and tricks today. So I'm Senior Engineer and Support Manager here at Checkpoint Technologies. I also have a certification in HP ALM and Quality Center version 11 and also a certified instructor. So again, thanks for joining today, and we appreciate your time.
And when the hour's up, not only do we want to make sure that you've learned something, but we want you to be able to go away saying, wow, I had no idea I was going to have that much fun. So if David happens to crack a joke, he is kind of a sensitive guy. If you could just type in LOL or ha-ha in your control panel for the GoToWebinar, and that is also where you're going to want to ask questions. David and I are going to do our best to answer any questions that you do ask. One thing that we will do is once we've gathered all the questions, we'll type the answers up and we'll email the questions and answers to all of you. Also, if any of you would like a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that David is doing, we will be more than happy to email that to you in PDF format. All you need to do, please, is just send me, Bob Cruz, an email, and you'll see my email address right up on your screen right now. So a little bit about Checkpoint Technologies. We are an HP software specialist partner and authorized training partner. We do a lot of customized training and mentoring also so that we can focus on using these solutions in your environment. We are also an HP authorized software support partner on the ALM Quality Center, Quick Test Pro, Load Runner, and Performance Center solutions. David is actually our support manager as well. We are also an ESSN partner, server storage and networking partner of HP's, and some other partnerships include Riverbed, F5, and VMware. And we are also a QAI training partner. So if any of you ever need some training on requirements writing, test case design, etc., feel free to reach out to us. You know, some unique qualifications or wins that we at Checkpoint Technologies have had. We actually developed HP's Quality Center Suite ASE exam for version 9.2. We developed their BPT 2-day course, BPT for the automation engineer. We're also reviewers of their Performance Center Load Runner Suite ASE exam. And we actually have a test lab and training center right in Tampa, Florida. Next month, we are relocating right across the street here to a new facility that is a little bit over 7,700 square feet. So we're very excited about that. So now, without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to David Browerman. David, take it away.
All right, thanks very much, Bob. Appreciate that intro. So my first attempt at humor, as Bob was mentioning, was, I mean, can you believe that Bob's been a certified instructor since 1998? I mean, I wasn't even born then, so just kidding. So today what we're going to do is look at some highlights, new features, some upgrade tips and tricks for the ALM Quality Center 11 version. And as I go, I'm going to talk about some of the differences in the, the terminologies and the features of both those products and those licenses. So some of the new features, just to kind of start off with for version 11, and again, based on time, I'm going to try to go through, some, if not all of this information. There's going to be some slides that will be part of the presentation that, again, we may not be able to get to, but they will be included if you do request the information. So we're going to look at optimized project repository. So this is a big change in version 11. We're going to talk about what that is, what that means to you and your organization. We're also going to look at some new features called publish and integrating graphs in what we're going to call scorecards on Wiki, SharePoint, project type of pages. So I'm going to show you how that works as well. You can also set up side-by-side clients. So one of the great features in version 11 is I'm able to pull up not only a browser with the version 11 of ALM or Quality Center, but I can also pull up a browser at the same time that has version 10, version 9.2, whereas in previous versions you weren't able to do that. The system would lock up or freeze up on you. So now you're able to look at, hey, here's my old information, maybe an old project, here's my new information on version 11. I can now do that side by side. From the requirement standpoint, there's a number of changes and a number of good things that happened in version 11. You're going to be able to see that you can now move requirements up and down in your requirements tree. That was difficult, if not impossible, to do before, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. They've also set up what we call a traceability matrix. So Quality Center and ALM versions 11 are going to allow you to link requirements to other requirements and link requirements to test cases as before. But what happens now is this can actually generate a nice traceability matrix in Excel format. Very nicely set up. It's going to give you totals of how many things are linked together, what everything looks like. It's really a great feature. You don't have to do the traceability matrix anymore from a manual perspective. The tool will do that for you. There's also a feature called test configurations. Again, we're not going to get a chance to go through that necessarily. I have added slides at the end that you'll have for your reference. But this is going to allow you to build test cases as use cases or a different flavor of a test case using parameters and that functionality. This is going to be a nice way to manage the test case in the test plan tree, but have different use cases or different flavors of that test case. HP Sprinter. So that's a new feature. It's actually an add-in, so similar to like the Excel add-in or Word add-in, if you're familiar with those. It comes with both Quality Center and the ALM version 11. It's going to be an enhanced manual test runner. It's going to provide some cool features around being more efficient with putting data from a spreadsheet onto your application. You can record and play back macros. So I'm going to talk about some of this in the next few slides. I'm going to talk about more on the HP Sprinter functionality. There's going to be no admin privileges needed for the client install. There are a few exceptions, like some of the add-ins I was just mentioning. But previously, what had to happen is you had to be an admin on your machine, or someone in your organization needed to push out the install to you. That's not necessarily the case, again, depending on what features and what add-ins you use. But you don't necessarily need admin privileges on your client machine anymore to install Quality Center and get it up and running. And then the final bullet point on here is project planning and tracking, or PPT. So what that's going to be is that's going to be ALM version 11 specific. So this is going to help project managers, people in PMO, things like that want to look at the project side of things. They're going to now be able to do some of that in Quality Center version 11, the ALM license. And I'm going to show you some screenshots of what that looks like and how to set that up.
So I think with the new features, what everybody can see clearly is that HP has truly evolved with Quality Center and ALM in making it a more enterprise solution.
Definitely. That's a great point, because what they're trying to do is, they're trying to bring everybody together on the project, the life cycle, the development team, all the players, to be able to have a one-stop shop or one area to be able to do all that work. To look at, how is the project doing? Look at how is the, the QA, the testing going? How is the development, the defects, and things like that handled? So they're trying to build everything on one platform, and that's kind of why they've renamed Quality Center, if you will, kind of under the umbrella of ALM, or Application Lifecycle Management, bringing all those pieces together in one tool. What you're going to notice here on the editions for version 11, there's 4 available editions now. There's the ALM. That's the the highest level. You might have heard it called Premier in the past, from like version 10. Anytime you hear ALM, you're going to think of cross-project. So whether it's cross-project sharing of requirements and test cases or automated tests, whether it's saving, reusing entities across projects. Maybe it's reporting. You want to do build some graphs and get some metrics from multiple projects in your organization. ALM means that sharing of information. All right. There's also the Quality Center Starter Edition, so that's going to be a very small subset of the overall features of Quality Center, basically for very small teams, small releases that you don't need more of the robust functionality that's in the ALM or even in the Enterprise Edition. So medium to large type of releases, you may not need the cross-project sharing or information as well. And then there's even a new Performance Center edition. So if you're working with, Performance Center load and performance type of testing, you can use this edition to schedule some of that and do that performance type of testing. So the ALM license is new. You may have, again, remembered it as like a Quality Center Premier. That's going to be that sharing and cross-reporting. And then the Performance Center edition is new as well. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, one of the major new features or redesigns of version 11, and this is going to be for any of the versions, ALM, the Enterprise, Starter, all those, is a new optimized repository structure. What this is going to do is it's going to help with increasing the capacity of your file systems, your storage, database, any information. So what happens now is if you save attachments, screenshots, Excel spreadsheets, whatever, to inside of Quality Center, every time you save that document, that item, that screenshot, it's going to get saved over and over. Even if the document, the screenshot is exactly the same, even if you've run that automated test 5 times today and it's exactly the same screenshots or information, Quality Center currently is going to store it 5 different times. What's changed in version 11 is it's no longer going to do that. What it will do is it will store it initially. Then there's going to be an algorithm or a job basically that's going to run and say, are these duplicates? If yes, what it's going to do, it's going to eliminate the duplicates. It's going to point everything to the item that is the same. You're no longer going to have all those additional files and all that additional information. It's going to definitely save time with finding information, with the storage size and the number of files.
So David, I do have a couple of very good questions here. So one question is, in the version 11 now, can you link, and I assume it's requirements and defects, etc., can you now link those to test steps as well as to test cases? Can you get that granular now?
You're going to still be able to do the defects pretty much to any of the entities in Quality Center. The requirements, you're going to get a little bit more granular using the test configurations area. You're going to be able to now take the use cases or what they call the test configurations and be able to link those back to requirements. And then, how the kind of the linking works in Quality Center is depending on where you start the linking at, it's going to indirectly or directly link to all those items. So if you've linked a test case to a requirement, and then when you execute that test, you write a defect. Even if you link the defect directly to the test execution itself, it will also indirectly link all the way back up through the chain. So it will link to the test. It will then link to the requirement, again, assuming that you've done your due diligence and you've linked everything throughout the process. So yes, you can do that.
And just to repeat something I had mentioned earlier, we're going to document the answers to all of these questions. And we're going to document that, but we're also going to do some additional research to clarify our answers even more so. Another question here is, how can you add version for defects? So I'm going to pipe in on that one, and David, you're welcome to interject. So the easiest and the best way to do it is if you're taking advantage of the releases and cycles feature and module in Quality Center and ALM, because you can then link defects to the specific release or even to a cycle within that release, and you can create filters for your defect reports or grids or whatnot. Another thing that you could always do if you wanted to get more granular than that, perhaps you had minor versions specified within a release or even within a cycle, then what you might want to do there is add a user-defined field with a customized list to specify those more granular version numbers or builds, and then you could add filters in your reports and graphs for that. David, would you have anything to add, or does that pretty much cover it?
No, that pretty much covers it.
Okay, great.
All right, so looking at the file system of the repository today, so how files and information is stored on the application server where Quality Center is installed, is, again, any steps, any screenshots, attachments, Excel spreadsheets for all your test efforts in those quality center projects. I mean, there's just a ton of files. I mean, there's a lot of files, and again, if you're storing things over and over or doing duplication, that's going to fill up that database, that repository very quickly. So what happens now with the smart repository, again, as we mentioned, you're not going to have any duplications. It's going to go through and look and clean that information up. It's also going to do with when you actually do the upgrade, there's going to be one piece that happens as part of the upgrade. There's going to be a smart optimization as far as the upgrade goes. And then once you've upgraded your projects, as I mentioned before, there's a way to schedule inside admin how often the cleanup and how often those jobs run in order to make everything a little bit more efficient. You'll notice here, just from some of the HP customers, some of the information as far as reduction in file size, the size of these repositories. So I highlighted one specifically for this customer where they had a project where you can see the file count before was over 8 million files that they had attached in this one particular project. After the smart repository and the optimization, they went down to 831,000, so they reduced their file count by 87%. And then just to the right of that, you'll see the size of the repository. It started out as 32 gigs. Once the entire optimization was done, it was down to 11 gigs, so 65% file reduction. So again, the size and the number of files is significantly impacted. Even some of the comments on here, the last comment down there says, it seems this feature alone will justify the upgrade to QC11. Some of the customers are that excited and that happy about the changes because that size and those databases get shrunk, again, can help you save without having to, put additional resources and things on board. Right. Another area that's for version 11, either in the ALM or the quality centers, to be able to publish and integrate graphs and scorecards that we're going to talk about, the scorecards in the project planning and tracking, but you're now able to share those on Wiki, SharePoint, HTML pages. So maybe you have a project web page that you want to keep up to date with, how is my project going, how many defects do I have, things like that. You're going to be able to now put those out onto those web pages. And the nice thing is that they're dynamic. So even though you put it out there as quality center numbers change, as the data changes, that's going to actually update as you go. So it's not static. You don't have to keep making the change. All right. So how do I do that? So you'll notice on my screenshot here what I did is in my analysis view in the dashboard, I've built and saved a graph, for example. All I do is once I save that graph, I right-click it. There's something called Share Analysis item. I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to decide, do I want it to be a public or private type of URL? Private is going to be, maybe I want to protect it from, just the general public. I don't want them to see that information. Or maybe I do want to make it public where anybody that puts that URL in their browser or clicks on that is going to see the actual graph. So I can change how I want to protect it. And then what you'll see here is that on the left-hand side, if you protect it, someone's going to have to use their login and username password to get in to see that information. Or on the right-hand side, if it's a public type of graph, you're just going to see the information. The other nice feature of this is, as I mentioned, dynamic, but you don't use a license if someone's just viewing this in a browser. They don't use a Quality Center license up when they look at it. So you can share that with project team or whoever in your organization. If you want to actually drill down and see the details, you'll notice at the bottom of the right-hand side it says Go to Graph and Application Lifecycle Management. If I click that, that's going to open up the graph and show me what it looks like in Quality Center, and then at that point you would use the license.
Hey, David, I have a question here in regard to the optimized project repository, specifically around performance. So I know, some customers have indicated they see poor response time in Quality Center 10. Does the optimized project repository assist with that and improve performance, or have there been other improvements made to increase performance?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some tuning and some performance updates for version 11. So what I can tell you is that I have had some feedback from customers because of scalability, and they had a lot of files and a lot of data previously, and that when they moved to the optimized structure, now that they don't have so many files, the database is smaller. It doesn't have to look for certain things and go through all these pointers and things like that. Is that the time to actually get information back and the time to find these files is greatly increased. So it's definitely going to speed up the performance, finding the information and then, decreasing the size of the files and then the database.
Great, thank you.
All right, so another piece of new functionality that's available in both Quality Center and ALM 11 is being able to move requirements up and down in the tree. So previously what may have happened is you forgot to put a requirement in, you had a late requirement, you wanted to put a requirement over top of another one. You weren't able to do that unless you renamed the requirement, you added a 1 in front, you named it funny with a A, B, or C just to get things in an order. You don't have to do that anymore. So all you need to do is go to the requirement itself in the requirements module, highlight it, you're going to click the up and down arrows that they provided, and then move the requirement wherever you want. So you can move it to the top of the tree, the bottom of the tree, wherever you want. So no more funny naming conventions, just move the requirement where you want them. All right, so Sprinter. So Sprinter is an enhanced manual runner. Let me just tell you that the feedback I get when I talk to clients or hear about using Sprinter, if you're a manual tester, you're on that side of the fence, that's where I get the most excitement from. They're so happy that HP finally thought of them from the manual side and not always just the automated tester or performance. They actually have something that they can use to make their lives easier. All right, so what are some of the things that Sprinter brings to the table? So Sprinter is an add-in, so it's just like a Excel or Word type of add-in. You download it on your client machine. This is going to hook up with Quality Center where you put your username, password in, what project. This is going to allow you to execute your manual test cases directly from Sprinter, and you're going to be able to do some different things with it. So I can now capture movies. I can annotate my screenshots, so I can put little funny messages to my developer friend. I can put text boxes, arrows. If there's issues on my screen, buttons aren't enabled, I can now tell my developer friend that, hey, this is the problem. There's no question about what was going on, what happened in my screenshot. I can also record and run macros. That's going to help me with things that are tedious, or I have a customer screen that I record all the keystrokes and then I want to play it back the next time. I can also automatically enter data into fields of my application. So I'm going to show you that in a second. That's called data injection. I can then put a spreadsheet together with the fields I want to use, the values. That's going to put those values onto my web page or my application. I can also include the list of steps that I accomplished or the user actions, the things that I clicked on my application or web page. I can include that in my defects. Again, that's going to help with ambiguity, knowing exactly what I clicked on, what values I put on my screen, what I was doing when I tested, and I can include that to my development team in my defects.
Hey, David, just if you can pause for one moment here. I'm not sure if during the presentation, were you going to be able to get into the Performance Center integration with ALM and Quality Center?
No, I was not going to be able to touch on that today.
All right. I've had a couple of questions on that. We will definitely email you directly for those of you that asked about Performance Center. We will definitely email you some information directly on that, if that's okay. Another question that I have, and I know the answer, but I wanted to make sure you were able to share it with the audience. We got a question about whether or not you've had any real-world experience utilizing Sprinter.
Yeah, I actually have. So I've done some manual type of testing with Sprinter. I've also, in some of my duties as being an instructor, I've gone to organizations and actually talked to them about Sprinter. I've helped them install it on their client machines, and I've also got it up and running. And so I've sat there and watched, the users and myself. I'll show them how it works, and then I watch them set up Sprinter and run their test cases, and I actually see, the differences of how efficient it makes with, adding these smart defects, recording movies, and things like that. So I've had not only real-world experience myself, but when I go to teach these classes, I actually see the students have, great luck with it as well.
And one of the things, David, perhaps you can expand a little bit on what the difference is, because Sprinter is not an automation solution. So the idea with Sprinter is it helps you speed up your manual testing in that you navigate to a screen or a web page, and then the Sprinter script you've created sees a lot of these different data entry fields and throws the data in. It saves you from typing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sprinter, once you hook it up on your client machine and you connect it to Quality Center with what project you want to work on, you're looking for the test cases that you have in your test lab module that you want to execute from a manual perspective. Sprinter will also interact with different desktop applications, web applications, different technologies. And what will happen is, you'll notice on my screen here is I have all the Sprinter tabs and things that I'm going to need for my test execution right overlaid on top of my desktop. If it was a web page, whatever application it is, I'm going to be able to do everything I need from an execution perspective, and I don't even need Quality Center open. So I'm going to have information. So for example, up on the left-hand side, up in the top, is a Tools button. So these are going to be able to expand and contract where they're very small if you don't need to use them. Like in this Tools area, I can take snapshots of my application or my, what I'm doing. I can also write defects. I have this run control table in the middle here for stopping the run, starting the run, moving to the next test if I need to, seeing how many steps and things I've been doing on my application. Up in the top right for macros, this is where I can record and play back macros and set those up. So I have that access available as well. Down on the bottom right for data injection. So if I've saved a spreadsheet, I've built a data table with my field names and the information I want to plug in there, I'm going to be able to push that data into a web page or an application when I need it. And again, I'll show you that here in a second. And then down on the left-hand corner, you're going to see all the steps. So whatever the steps were in my test case, I'm going to be able to see what is the step name, what should I be doing or the tester doing, what are the expected results. I can pass and fail on my steps from here. I can write a defect. I can even remind myself to write a defect later. So anything I need to do as far as my execution of my manual test, I can now do using Sprinter right on top of my application. I don't need to toggle back and forth to see what my step was if I forgot, and I don't even need Quality Center open anymore. This will interact with my application directly.
And David, do you know if if Quality Center and the Performance Center, can they share the same database? I think I'm asking that question correctly.
I believe so, but I'll have to double check how that's set up or how that configuration is going to look. It's going to kind of depend on not only your environment, what databases you're using, but the setup of Quality Center, the setup for Performance Center. If you just have Performance Center already as a tool and you have the Performance Center edition, you should be able to share everything, but again, we'll double check just to make sure. All right, so as far as the data injection side, so as I mentioned before, associating a spreadsheet to Sprinter and then injecting data into your application, this is going to help with things that are very repetitive. Maybe you have a customer screen that's very long. You want to make sure that everything is exactly correct for purposes of auditing or whatever the case may be. So this is going to keep the tester from having to keep manually typing information onto their system. So what you'll notice down here in the right-hand corner is on this particular web page, we've built a spreadsheet and saved it into Sprinter for injecting the first name, last name, the meal type, and the card type for like Visa, MasterCard. So what will happen is I basically click on one of those rows, whatever row I want to inject into my system, and I'm going to click the button to inject the data, and it will inject it directly in there. Again, there's going to be a little bit of mapping and some of the setup on the front end, but it's actually very simple to build. Add this spreadsheet and then use the injection feature. So it's going to definitely accelerate your manual test execution.
And then, David, just one question that was asked, and I'm pretty certain of this, but Sprinter comes with Quality Center and ALM.
Yes. So
are any additional licenses, do any additional licenses have to be purchased?
No. So it comes with the ALM and the Quality Center Enterprise. It does not come with Starter or Performance. You don't need any additional licenses. You basically go to the add-ins page, and one of the downloads will be Sprinter. What I would recommend is if you want to use it, download the Sprinter file on your client, and it's got to go on each client machine that wants to use it. Then there's also going to be a Sprinter patch that's going to fix any issues or help you make sure that if you're using like Windows 7 and some of the newer technologies, I would recommend putting Sprinter Patch 9 on, which is one of the up-to-date patches for Sprinter. All right, so another cool feature that testers love is what's called mirror testing. So this is going to be through Sprinter. It's going to allow you to run up to 5 secondary machines at the same time, or basically at the same time you're running and executing a test case on your machine. So you might want to test other operating systems or other browsers. So you might be a tester that comes onto your machine or your lab machine and you're using Windows 7. Maybe you also need to test the same test on Vista or XP, or maybe you're doing the different Internet Explorer versions or Chrome or Firefox or whatever the case may be. You don't want to have to keep going to multiple machines and doing the test case over and over. That's just going to be a waste of time. So with the mirror testing, you're going to be able to do up to 5 machines at a time. The key thing to think about here is you have to put Sprinter on each one of those machines that you're going to also run your test case on. And then as you execute or do your actions on your machine, you're going to actually use like a remote desktop or an IP configuration to connect to the other machine. It's going to replicate your actions on those machines as well. So think of the time savings. If you got 4 or 5 different browsers or operating systems that you want to use, you run the test once, it's going to do them on all the machines. So here's what it kind of looks like. So what you notice is on a web page, and I can not only see the primary machine of how many steps and things that I'm working on, I can also see the other browsers or other operating systems that I'm working on those remote machines. I can see and make sure that we're on the same step. It'll also tell me in this perspective that everything's green. It means everything's good so far. If I happen to see something red pop up, or maybe it was on step 5, I can actually click on some of these buttons and I can actually see what is on that screen. What does that machine look like? And then at that point, I can control it. I might want to skip that step. Maybe I want to reset something. Maybe I need to log back in. I need to figure something out in order to move forward and catch up. So this allows me to manipulate and use Sprinter and connect to those other machines and then run the test all at the same time.
And David, is mirroring, say that 10 times fast, is mirroring a feature of Sprinter in Quality Center version 10?
No. So Sprinter does not exist at all in version 10. Sprinter is a brand new functionality in version 11 in Enterprise and ALM. So you have to upgrade or have to have version 11 installed in order to be able to use the Sprinter add-in. And then the mirror testing is part of the Sprinter functionality. All right, so I want to move on to another important feature, and this is specific to the ALM license. This is not an Enterprise, Performance Center, any of the starter. This is ALM specific. It's called Project Planning and Tracking, or affectionately known as PPT. So what does this allow you to do? This is more of kind of a project management, an overview, a focus of, how are we doing on our release? So this is going to help us with tracking how ready we are to move our application, hopefully at some point to production. But, what are some goals, activities, what are the things that are going on in our release? So how are we going to set that up? So some of the new key terminology that you're going to see here are release scope or release scope items. You're also going to see milestones, KPIs or key performance indicators, and then you're going to also see a master plan chart and scorecards. So this is going to be all new terminology based around ALM project planning and tracking. So what you'll notice here is I'm in my releases module in version 11, and I've highlighted on the left-hand side in the tree, I've highlighted a release 10.5. So just like in previous versions of Quality Center, what you can do is set up your releases, and then a lot of people like to take their requirements and link those back to the release so they can see, where they at from a progress, and then even for the defect side of it, how are they doing from a quality standpoint. Well, that gives you kind of limited functionality. So if all I can do is link back my requirements to my release, it doesn't really give me a full picture of what are we working on in our release. So you'll notice kind of on the right-hand side top, I've highlighted this Release Scope tab. And the Release Scope is going to allow you to drill down and show under my release what are the things that we're really working on, what's important, what is the new functionality, what are the new features, what are the changes that we're making to our application, our system. And now we can set those out so we can better manage the release. So not just seeing the requirements back to the release, but what are all the things we need to make sure we're reviewing as part of the release. So, for example, there's an online booking service, there's a self-service profile, there's a customer registration. It could be for a shopping cart. Any new functionality or anything that changes your system, you can put as a release scope item. You basically just right above where the scope items are, you click the plus button, you name the scope item. Down at the bottom, the cool feature is now you can say, what are all the things that we want to look at and associate to our release scope item. So, for example, online recurring booking service is highlighted. what are all the requirements that I want to make sure I review or look at for that process or that change. I can also now do, what are all the tests that I want to plan out or I want to build in my test plan module? What are all the test sets that I want to actually execute to verify that booking service, that shopping cart, whatever that feature is? And what are all the defects that we need to look at or that have come up to make sure that have been taken care of before, again, we move this on to production. So now we've got a more granular look of all the things that we're going to handle in our release, not just the requirements, but all the scope items and all the functions and changes that we want to review.
Hey, David, real quick, I just want to make sure, because some folks may have joined us after the initial announcement or something, but you're on track currently where you're going to be able to get to the tips and tricks.
Absolutely.
For upgrading, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, so time-wise, we're doing fine.
Yep.
A lot of great questions. I don't want you all to think we're ignoring them. We just want to make sure we keep on track, because I have had a lot of folks ask about the tips and tricks. So, all right, Dave.
Yeah, we've got a handful more, and then we're going to get to that section. All right, so as part of your release scope items and your releases, what you're going to be able to do now is set up milestones. So the milestones is just how are we progressing in our release? What are the things that we want to measure or to make sure that we're meeting the timelines? So down on the left-hand side of my tree under my release, I set up some milestones. So a launch milestone. Maybe you're going to launch a new web page or a new application. Maybe you have a code freeze or you're released to production. And then in those milestones, you're going to associate those scope items back to what you want to check. So for example, my web portal integration, maybe I'm building a web page or I want to make sure it integrates with other systems. Under my milestone scope, I'm going to start pulling in what are those scope items that I just previously built that, again, I want to verify that new functionality, those changes in my system. And then now I can measure the milestones or the timelines and see how we're meeting those standards, how we're doing on our timelines. Those are going to be milestones. You can also now see the progress of your release using this master plan, this Gantt chart. It's going to now enable you to see all the milestones and things that you're working on, and it's going to give you a timeline of, hey, this purchase order, this report, these jobs, these things that we need to verify or make sure they're working correctly. Here's the timelines of how long they're supposed to take. Here's the order of what we're looking at, and then these actually allow drill down functionality. If you click on the actual timeline itself, it's going to give you information about the scope items and the milestones and then the dates and things like that. All right. So KPIs you can now set up against your milestone because you want to measure or figure out how are we meeting our goals and objectives. All our activities that we're working on for our releases, we're going to be able to build key performance indicators. So these KPIs are going to let you see, are you meeting your thresholds, are you meeting what you're trying to do, or you're actually, maybe you have some issues. So what you're going to notice here is these KPIs can be set up for your milestones. So for example, there's a KPI tab here. So for each milestone, you might want to measure for your scope items, how are we doing? How many severe defects do we have? How many requirements have passed? How many defects are we fixing each day? Executed tests, whatever you want to measure. There's a bunch of them out of the box. So on the right-hand side, you're going to see all the different KPI types that come out of the box. These can just basically be grabbed and pulled over using the arrow functionality similar to other functions in the Quality Center. If you don't like these KPIs, they don't mean anything to you, you don't like the values, you can actually build your own. You can set up your own if you want to. Using the project customization site admin, you can build those out. And then you can even set up the thresholds here at the bottom. What does it mean if we have one severe defect? Maybe that's not acceptable. We want that to turn red or to let us know that, hey, that's not working for us, so we need to address that.
Hey, David, on PPT data, do you know if that can be exported to HP's PPM solution?
I believe so. I'll double check with that. I believe that can be integrated with that solution. There would be some configurations, but I'll have to double check on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so once you build your KPIs to measure your milestones, to check out the scope items, how are we doing on our release, you can actually go to the scorecard tab. You can generate a scorecard. So all the milestones, all the scope items, I can now, when I generate my scorecard, I can now see if I'm meeting my objectives, my goals that I set out, or maybe I have issues. So for example, in this code freeze, I have a severe defect. So back on the previous slide, what I had set up here at the bottom for severe defect was It's okay if I have a severe defect below 1. So that means basically if I have no severe defects, moving to production, that's what I want. If I have 1, I have a problem or I need to address it. So 1 severe defect popped up, it's showing as red, there's a problem. These are nice as well because I can click on it and drill down and actually see the graph and what the issue was. So this is going to help me building scorecards, and then remember I can share these scorecards out on Wiki, SharePoint, or project type of pages, and they're dynamic as the information updates in Quality Center, they update as well.
And David, have you, you know, some of these features are specific just to ALM.
PPT is, yes.
So PPT is just for ALM. As far as the other features that you went through, if you did not specify that it was just for ALM, then it's available in both, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So if I didn't specifically say ALM or, and I have the notes actually in the slides that will say ALM or not, but yeah, if I didn't say anything or it was blank, that applies to enterprise as well, for example.
And as David mentioned earlier, in the actual slide presentation that he's got here, there are some additional slides with more granular information that we just can't go over because we're trying to be respectful of everybody's time. We know that a lot of you are taking this on your lunch hour, but the slides definitely have more detailed information as well.
All right, so let's look at some top secret files for ALM and Quality Center 11. So everybody get your 3D glasses out, get those on, right? So some of the tips and tricks around upgrades, things that I've noticed working with clients or doing upgrades. One of the things to keep in mind, and sometimes it seems like a no-brainer to make sure you plan things out, but you definitely want to map things out using checklists, a project plan to track responsibilities. So who's doing what in the upgrade? What type of timelines do we have? Who are the stakeholders involved? Making sure that everybody knows what are their roles, responsibilities, when they're needed, what they should be doing. So you definitely want to look at environment configuration, so hardware, software, what type of setup do we need? The Quality Center comes with a guide that says, these are the minimum specs that you must have for operating systems and software and databases and things like that. So you have to look at that information. You also have to think about backing up your current information. You don't obviously want to lose that information, moving data around. So you want to, set up for backing up databases. The project repositories, as we talked about before, all those files, attachments, screenshots. You want to make sure that's all backed up because that's going to be part of that smart repository upgrade process. And you also want to set up who's going to validate the data once the upgrade is finished, to make sure that the defects are still there, the requirements still look the same way, the attachments that we put in there before. You want to set out who those are responsible and what they're actually going to be looking for. I can't tell you how many times that an unknown password, so you didn't know the the company didn't know the password to some database, they didn't have the right admin permissions on where they were installing the software. Just little things like that can definitely put a huge delay on the upgrade and the implementation process. So that's why it's important to have those timelines, stakeholders involved, and all the roles and responsibilities. So another thing to keep in mind is that if you're using version control in a previous version of Quality Center, so in version 10 it has built-in version control, you may have used that on your projects, or even like 9.2 for example, maybe you had a third-party version control set up. You've got to make sure that when you're doing your upgrade that you have those projects, you have all those entities checked back in. If you have anything that's checked out, you try to run the upgrade process, it's going to blow up, it's going to fail, it's going to tell you, hey, there's items that cannot be fixed by the repair tool, this upgrade is not going to proceed. You're going to have to go back, you're going to have to check in those items, those requirements, test cases, test resources, business components. Whatever you have under version control, you've got to go back and check it in and start the upgrade over. Right? One other way you can do it, so if you don't do it from the traditional check-in method of version control in your project itself, is you can go into site admin. Any table in site admin for your project that starts with a VC underscore, that's going to be a version control table. You're going to want to go through those and look and make sure that nothing says checked out. If it does, you're going to have to change that to either checked in site admin or go to the project and check in those values. So definitely don't get stuck in the middle of an upgrade with something that's checked out, because you're going to have to start all over, and again, that's going to waste a bunch of time.
And I do want to interrupt for just a moment. David has performed numerous upgrades for our clients and whatnot. So these tips and tricks that he's sharing, they are definitely real world. In some cases, he knew in advance to avoid them, and in other cases, I think you learn the hard way.
Right. Or you might think you have the right password and you get there and it was, well, they changed it, last week and somebody didn't know about it. So, as far as installing the software for ALM or Quality Center version 11 and doing your upgrade, one thing I can definitely recommend is try it out on a sandbox, a testing environment. And the reason why you want to do that is it's going to not only get you practice with maybe doing the upgrade, it's also going to help you understand how long is something like this going to take, or get a better idea to be able to make some educated guesses. It's also going to let you, once you get the software installed, try out some of the new functionality. See what it looks like. See if it's going to work for you. Have some of your users go into a sandbox where you're not going to mess anything up. Make some updates, try out the functionality, and see what that looks like. All right. So one thing I can definitely recommend is, as you back up or you save, the projects and maybe move them onto a test database or an area on your database that you want to use for testing, once you install the ALM or Quality Center 11 software on a test server, for example, is take a handful of projects, maybe one huge project, maybe one small project, whatever you want to do, and run the verify, repair, upgrade process. So you're going to click a button inside admin to do this. That's going to give you a better idea from that upgrade perspective how long the system will take to verify the project. It has certain tables and certain values in it. If something needs to be repaired and you run that process, how long that repair process will take. If some Quality Center needs to do something to your current project. And then you're going to also see how long the upgrade of the project from one version to the other will take. Take that information and then use that to calculate other projects and other things that you have. Because if you just try to go into your project and you look and you say, hey, we got 10 projects, they're 50 gigs in size, that should take us about 2 days. Let me tell you, that doesn't always work that way. It's definitely based on your configuration, your environment, how you have things set up, your pipeline of your system, but it also, is the data in your project. In some cases, moving things around and upgrading projects isn't just, very cut and dried. So I would definitely recommend the verify, repair, upgrade on a test project or a handful of projects. Use that data. If it takes 8 hours to do that, and you got 10 other projects just like it, then it might be 80 hours, or again, whatever the case may be. All right. So if you're thinking about moving to version 11, if you're on Quality Center 8, Test Director 8, 7, whatever in the past, you have to go to Quality Center 9.2 first. Then you can go directly to Quality Center 11. If you're on Quality Center 9, you've got to go to 9 or 10, do the upgrade process to that. I give you some patch level information. You have to be at a certain patch level to do that. If you're on 9.2, you can go directly to 11, and if you're on 10, you can also go to 11. So this should give you some helpful information on, if this is where we're at currently, this is where we want to go, how to actually get there, what the upgrade path is, and what patches you actually need. All right, so about 10 till, pretty good timing, I think.
David, does Quality Center support a MySQL database?
So it's not going to support MySQL database. It's going to support, for example, SQL 2005, 2008. There's some Oracle 10 and 11 databases. What we can do is provide, or there's information on the minimum and the actual recommended specifications that should be used depending on what your environment looks like. So that's not going to actually be supported, but what we can do is provide all the recommended or the configurations that are needed.
And a couple of folks have asked, if there's directly and indirectly about the price difference between Quality Center and ALM. So there is a price difference. Obviously, ALM is the, as David put it, the former premier edition of Quality Center. So there is an upcharge. If you'd like to get some detailed information, please feel free to reach out. The other thing I want to emphasize is that we at Checkpoint Technologies, we do offer complimentary 1-hour phone consultations on upgrades. We're based on David's availability. We'd be more than happy to schedule that with you or your organization. And again, that's for 1 hour. David can answer some questions and share other tips and tricks. Just email me if you'd like to arrange that, and I'm sure we can work something out. So just let me see what other questions we have. We've got a lot of them. So we didn't really cover synchronizer in this particular webinar session. David, can you just share a little bit about that and the synchronizer?
Yeah, so the synchronizer is another add-in that comes with version 11, so it doesn't really matter what version you're on. But what does matter is if you're going to use, for example, the defect synchronizer, that's going to be specific to ALM. If you have another type of defect management tool and you want to be able to interact with ALM and that defect management tool, the synchronizer is basically just kind of the liaison or the bridge between the two tools. And then what happens is when you install the synchronizer on the server, you're going to tell it, hey, I'm using this defect management tool currently. I want to take these fields and defect management tool that I'm currently using, and I want to map those over to how Quality Center sees defects, and I want to feed the information and synchronize back and forth. You can use it with some of the requirements tool, Rec Pro and things like that. So you can synchronize data between those other tools that you're using around requirements and defects and testing, and be able to feed that data back and forth between Quality Center, because you may not want to stop using that requirements tool or that test tool or that defect tool, but you want to be able to get the data into Quality Center in order to synchronize it and link them together. So the synchronizer is available as an add-in. Again, if you're going to use the defect side specifically, that's going to be an ALM specific item. If you're going to use like Rec Pro or something like that where it's a requirements tool, you can actually download the add-in.
Another question here is, have you heard any concrete target date as to when version 11.5 will be released?
So 11.5 is out for some of the partners in sort of like a beta type of testing right now. So that is available right now, not for the general public. I believe, I don't have an exact date, but I know before the end of the year that it's scheduled to be out. So there's going to be some cool new features in version 11, specifically around bringing development more into Quality Center. So there's going to be what's called ALI, Application Lifecycle Intelligence. There's going to be another module, for example, built into Quality Center for the developers to look at code changes and builds and be able to link that back to what QA and testing and the project team's doing. So that's going to be by the end of the year. Again, I don't have an exact date, but I know the beta and some of the partners are looking at that now. So be on the lookout for 11.5 at some point this year.
Great, great. One question that was asked and is, you're talking about some of the challenges and whatnot. Are you specifically aware of other causes which passes verify and repair but fails at the time of upgrade?
In some cases, what I've seen is, like for passwords, for example, in some cases, like the verify and repair is going to check for, the size of the tables and, what information in there, if something's corrupt or missing, things like that. But what I've seen is that when you get into the upgrade process, part of the way down, it might be trying to access a project database specifically. And that user or that permission that was set up to access data or move data or be in an admin level, it gets to that point and it's trying to write something to a database specifically, and it doesn't have the access to do that. So I've seen it fail directly in there and say, user ID, blah, 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 or site admin or whatever they have set up as the user ID to do those things does not have the access, and it will fail at that point. You've got to actually stop the process there, go into the database or make sure that, the site admin is the owner of a database, and then redo the upgrade process, and then it usually will go forward.
Great, thank you. Will Synchronizer work with ALM 11 Enterprise Edition? That's a yes, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an add-in.
And there's no charge for that add-in.
Correct.
So everybody, we are rapidly approaching 1 p.m. East Coast time. I just wanted to say a couple of things. Again, please feel free to email us if you'd like a copy of the slide deck in PDF format. We are also recording the presentation, so if you would like that, let us know that as well, and that is probably going to be of the size where we are going to have to FTP that to you. Also, I can't emphasize enough, if any of you by any chance are in the New Orleans area, Louisiana, or have any relatives there, you're in our thoughts and prayers. Stay safe. David and I, we're located in Tampa, so we know how close that came to Tampa, that storm. And the other thing, I want to give a shout out to Kate Beck. A lot of you don't realize the behind-the-scenes work that goes in setting up a webinar. So we have Kate to thank for organizing this. So David, any last words of wisdom or bad jokes or anything? I was kidding about the bad joke.
Remember, Bob's been around for a long time.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. And we're going to leave the webinar open for just a few minutes. We're going to close the phone line. But feel free to submit questions, and we will do our very best to answer all of them and get it back to you. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.